to say I'm having a beautiful day, and I hope you are too. I really enjoyed sharing that video with you guys yesterday. However, it was a little bit long. As I said, I'm an amateur with these videos, but I'm going to get a little bit better. So I promise you it won't be 20 minutes today. We talked about Jeremiah, and just to give you a brief summary of those who may have not joined us yesterday, Jeremiah was called to be a prophet. He prophesied for 40 years. 40 years in his youth he started. And in those 40 years, no one took heed to the works that he did by, sharing how God felt in the judgment against Israel and its sin. During that whole time, people were very antagonistic. They were apathetic towards him. Meaning they didn't care. They didn't want to hear him, and they were, just very critical of him. They basically also just ignored him. And we all know that God values all of us, and he values us enough that he planned for this for Jeremiah from his mother's womb, even before his time. Can you imagine, before his fingers and his toes and his mom going into labor and all of this? God had already said, I want Jeremiah to be my prophet for 40 years in the southern kingdom of Judah, or sometimes referred to as Israel, for 40 years. And of course, God knew when he gave him this work that all of these things and how people were going to treat him was going to occur that way. But God knew that Jeremiah was built for endurance. And that's what we as Christians have to be built for, is endurance and and be able to persevere. We have to hang on to God's unchanging hand. And don't think that I'm saying for 1 minute there's not going to be some tears, there's not going to be some anger, some frustration, some trials, some storms. But whatever it is, we have to endure to the end when God gives us a plan. Amen. We have got to stay there. God has a purpose for all of us Christians. And some people, though, are actually appointed for specific jobs or works, such as Jeremiah. And if you want to think about it, that's a gift in all itself. Before you were born, all the millions of little sperm eggs and all the millions of little, sperms and eggs that were floating around, God chose one set to mate, come together, develop into a human body, and assign it an assignment for his purpose. That's an amazing miracle. And I just know that, when God does these things, I think he has a sense of humor. I bet you he'd be saying like, boy, I think he's going to have blue eyes and brown hair. And, he's just thinking of how he's going to do these things. And I bet you he just says, I'm going to make him really strong, and he's going to be able to handle this, and he's going to be able to handle that, or she's going to be able to handle this and that. And that sounds like a really cool thing to be God. I mean, I just honor my Father. He is just an awesome creator. And there is no other like him. There is just no other like the true and living God. But anyway, we have other people, such as Jeremiah, that were put here for a specific purpose or appointed for a specific time. A couple of examples of those were Samson, which you can find him in Judges 13, verses 3-5. David, or King David, as some people say, you can find him in 1 Samuel chapter 16. 1, 12, and 1, and then also again in 12 and 13. You had John the Baptist, which everybody knows that. I mean, he loved God so much, and his plan was, I think, to be able to baptize the Savior, guys. I mean, that is like God chose him, and people let's just talk about John the Baptist a little bit. John the Baptist, I tell people when I talk to them, I'm radical like John the Baptist. I love God. I love Jesus. People get tired of me talking about him. I don't care. You're going to know it at work. You're going to know it in the grocery store. You're going to know it in the car. You're going to know it on the road. When you're waving the, I love Jesus side, or Jesus saves. I'm the one that's honking my horn, letting you know, yes, I am down for Jesus. I mean, that is me. And when I think about John the Baptist, I said, I'm not saying I'm as radical as John the Baptist, but I say he reminds me of myself, because I'm very radical and I really love him. And I feel like every minute of my day is filled with him, because he is the reason why I live. And John the Baptist reminds me of myself because people now are probably saying, even as they're looking at this video, she is not cute. Look at her makeup. You know, she keep moving her hands. Why she ain't get it all pretty? She ain't got enough light. You know, look at her hair. Look at her nose. Look at her tongue. Look at her mouth. Looky. Well, people, that's why I love John the Baptist. John the Baptist to me was the most person in the Bible that makes me want to really be a Christian because he did not care how he looked. I mean, he had raggedy hair, you know, he looked dirty and scruffy. And even though he looked like that, everybody didn't follow John the Baptist to get baptized. But there were some people that were very smart to not look at John the Baptist how he looked, but listen to what John the Baptist had to say. They didn't get all wrapped up in how he looked and, you know, and thought, well, this man looking kind of rough. You know, I don't think I want to deal with him. I mean, no, they didn't do that. You know, that's what the Sadducees and the Pharisees did. You know, they had the long robes and they had the look, but their heart was so far from God, it ain't funny. And that's how some of us Christians are today. But with that being said, John the Baptist reminds me of myself. I'm radical. I don't look like your typical Christian. I don't fit in like your typical Christian, if that's what you want to call it, because I really just consider myself serving Christ and having a relationship and not a religion. But since I'm talking about people that love Christ, and Christianity is what they call it today, we can refer to that. But another person also is Paul. Oh, Paul. I could be a John the Baptist and a Paul altogether because Paul would tell you off and he wouldn't care. He'd tell you straight up and you love it or hate it, but he was going to do the will of God. And that reminds me of myself. And I think sometimes that kind of gets his mouth in trouble. But hey, call me Paula. I'm Paula and I'm Johnny May the Baptist when it comes to their character. Okay. All right. Now let's get back to the text. You know, these were several people also that were called for God to do a work, and they all did what they were supposed to do. And when God gives us work to do, we have to do it with due diligence and with cheer. You know, we can't do it like we hate it. You know, cleaning the toilets at church, I hate it. You know, ushering at the door, I hate it. You know, you cannot have that kind of character when we are doing things for God. That's why if that's not your forte, seating people, cleaning the toilets, watching the youth, don't do it. Find yourself something or seek God for guidance in what you are supposed to be doing in his kingdom. Don't do it to get next to the pastor. Don't do it to get recognition from the congregation. Do it because you have the passion and God has led you into it. Okay, you got plenty of people that get taught and do school and learn how to, you know, be an usher, and they go to the ushering classes and they go to the, you know, to the choir, but they hate it. They're never on time. They never hear, they're rude to people. And I had that experience in a church I attended, and they didn't like what I had to say, but it was true. You got to have people that are nice and happy that are seating people and not being mean and rough with them, because if I didn't know any better, I could have just said, you know what? I think that this is not the church for me, and walk right back out of the door. And that little incident could have caused someone's soul to be lost. They might figure, if this is how church is, I don't never want to be it. And people's like, oh, ain't nobody going to do that, but you don't know that. So that's why you got to have the right character. Okay, guys. Anyway, sometimes when God gives us a plan, of course, I know he's got me doing some things right now. And I can procrastinate, y'all. God pray for me. Y'all pray for me because I'm a procrastinator sometimes. But it'll make, you'll feel inadequate, or you'll feel like you don't have the competence or the ability or the training to do what he did, just like how Jeremiah did. So when God does that, just know that he promised that he will be with us and he'll deliver us through whatever it is. And if he gave it to us and he gave that job for us to do, he's going to provide us every means to do it. Even if it means the money, if it means the people, because let me tell you, let's talk about the people. The Bible says, put your no trust in man. And I had some people that I asked to do some things for me. And I'm not by any means throwing anybody under the bus. I'm just keeping it real. And I'm just letting people know that when God gives someone a vision or a dream and they come to you, hopefully they have prayed about it and asked God for guidance of who to attach that vision or that dream to and make them a part of it. And when they come to you and they ask you, you should go and pray also. And hopefully we pray into the same God, so we should come back with the same answer. Where I'm going with this is, don't accept an obligation from one of your fellow sisters or brothers and then decide, oh, I'm going to start my own stuff. Okay, most people ain't going to tell you this, but I just say the things that most people are thinking, and if I don't say it, somebody's eventually going to say it to you anyway, so let's just get that out there, okay? But don't go and add yourself onto something that you're not going to follow through with, Make sure you stick to your commitment. And see, that's where God had a problem with Israel during this time, because he knew that they were the holiness of the Lord and they were the holiness of him. He knew that every harvest, he got their first fruits. They were committed to him. But then all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, they lost their little selves and they became idolaters and they began to worship idols, including Baal, which we'll talk about that later on in chapter 2. And I want you guys to read that and do your research on Baal and Jezebel, because boy, Jezebel is not just a man. It's not just a woman. It can be both. Okay. And that is a very horrible spirit of manipulation. So we will get into Jezebel a little bit later, but let's stick to this. Okay. When God gives you, as I said, something to do, he'll provide you with everything you need. And he will deliver on it. Now, what I like about this story is that God promised Jeremiah that he would deliver him from trouble, but he never said that trouble wouldn't come his way. And that is what I meant by when I started these videos. Trouble was coming by leaps and bounds and over the sea. And I'm ready, boy. I'm ready like, and I'm karate chopping and I'm judo chopping and I'm going through and I'm praying and I'm crying and I'm falling out and I'm going through all these things and just going through all the motions. The trouble gonna come, y'all. The storm's gonna come, y'all. You're not gonna have it perfect. Jesus never promised you it was going to be perfect. All he wants you to do is persevere and do it with endurance and strength. And he will meet you in the end. And that's easy to say because higher levels, higher devils. And I know that. But you're still going to get the strength. Every level you go, God's also, just like those devils are getting higher, God is also giving you the strength to go higher. And as he's elevating you, he's not going to equip you to be elevated and not be protected. So keep that in mind. Even through Jeremiah's whole bout, he went to jail, he was deported, he had insults, people didn't like him, they didn't listen to him. Does anybody know what it feels like to be ignored today? I do. I know what it feels like to be in a room of people and everybody having a conversation. And I've had it happen where I start talking and the people just act like I'm not even sitting there and they just having their own conversation. And they hear you and they see you because you see them cut their eyes over at you, but yet they keep talking amongst themselves. That's what Jeremiah experienced. He experienced that while he was talking, people were not listening. They felt like what he was saying, we don't want to hear that crap you talking. You every day, you blah, 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 blah. You talking about this judgment against Israel. You talking about my sin. You talking about God and what he gonna do. And I'm God this and God that and Jesus this, Jesus that. I don't want to hear that. That's what the people are saying in their minds. Kind of like back with the flood, when Noah talked to them about the flood. Same thing. And sometimes people think those things only happened in the Bible, but they are yet still happening today, that you have people coming to you constantly, over and over, trying to tell you about the judges and the judgment that will come upon us, as well as the wages of sin is death. But we still keep thinking about what we driving, how much money we got in the bank, we clubbing, we getting it on. Hey, girl, yeah, I'm going to be at the club tonight. But we never stop to think. This man done been talking to me for 6 weeks, and I haven't even listened to a word he said. I haven't even acknowledged him. So 40 years? I can't even imagine. 40 years. Now, some might say, well, why was it 40 years? I don't know. You have to ask God that. But what I will tell you is 40 years is 6 years younger than me, y'all. So 40 years is a long time to be telling somebody about sin. That means people done came and gone and died and did all kind of stuff, and they still did not heed. the message that Jeremiah was trying to give them, because they were so stubborn and roughneck. They didn't want to hear that. They had all the answers. Everything was going their way. You know, they didn't care because they were not patient to wait on God, like some of us are today. But anyway, just for Jeremiah to work and warn these people, that is a big responsibility to be given nations and kingdoms. Nations and kingdoms. Now here we are in little old Leesburg. And some of us in ministry feel like we can't even sweep the city. Imagine God giving you the responsibility of nations and kingdoms, which he does, because what applied to Jeremiah also applies to us today, to get the gospel out all over the world. But this was a young youth, a man in his youth, and God gave him that responsibility. So when people tell you you're too young, you're too new in the church, you don't know what you're doing, you ain't got the gift, you got to go to Bible college, you got to go to seminary, you don't know how to do this, you're unseasoned, you're out of order because you don't know how to do this and you don't know how to do that. Where was everybody else when God told him, Jeremiah, this is what you're going to do? And I know I'm going to get some flack from this, because that's the religious folk that will have a problem with it. The people that have a relationship with God will understand that God is a God of order, but he also is a God of promise. And if he gives you something to do and he tells you to do it, he will confirm it with someone. And sometimes people say, well, why didn't your leader tell you? Well, what I learned is, how you know how your leader lives? I'm not putting my mouth on nobody. I'm not throwing no murk out there. But I know for a fact, I know leaders that have done things and they still up in the pulpit preaching, and people know they done them, and they rather follow them than hear something that I or you got to say, and they live right in our area and know what we do every day, all day, and know we're in the Word of God. And once the preachers leave the atmosphere and they go out, you don't know what they're doing. Well, God can't talk to nobody dirty, and I'm not saying that that's not the case, but we don't know how our leaders are. We don't know where they are going. So that's why when he does give you a vision, you have to take it to your leader. But that doesn't mean that God didn't tell you to, like some people are saying, well, why did he tell you and he didn't tell me? You would be God. He's not going to tell you everything. If he told you everything, you would be God. And you're not God. You're a leader. Okay? Just wanted to clear that up. Okay.